Remember when the Queen came to our school? How she took away those 10 kids? Yeah, I checked on that. She was definitely in BC in the fall of '64. I remember their names, some of them, the boys. I pull out my notepad. There was Harvey and Ralph Parker, Métis boys from Lytton. They were in the group taken away by the Queen and Philip after the picnic at Dead Man's Creek. 5 other boys went, and 3 girls. They were all in the smart group in school. The 10 children were never seen again.
Here is Kevin Annett, a pastor who's been warning about the abuse of children in Canada, but with links back to Britain. He's now been banned from Britain.
And links to the Crown as well. Our Queen and Prince Philip going out to Canada and taking 10 children from the smart class of a school, and those kids never been seen again, and made to kiss our Queen's feet.
So, Leah McGrath Goodman, you've been banned from entering the UK due to your investigative reporting into sex crimes in Jersey.
The following quote comes from UK MP Tom Watson. Evidence file used to convict paedophile Peter Wrighton, if it still exists, contains clear intelligence of a widespread paedophile ring. One of its members boasts of his links to a senior aide of a former Prime Minister who said he could smuggle indecent images of children from abroad. The leads were not followed up, but if the files still exist, I want to ensure that the Metropolitan Police secure the evidence, re-examine it and investigate clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10.
He was one of the Liberal Party's most senior MPs and a leading figure in national politics. But Cyril Smith was a serial paedophile who abused dozens of young boys and was never prosecuted. Tonight, new evidence has emerged revealing how MI5 and Special Branch buried his crimes. An investigation for Channel 4's Dispatches programme Tonight has uncovered a police file which accuses him of a sordid series of indecent episodes with young boys. It was handed to prosecutors but then hidden and locked away for more than 4 decades. Smith went on abusing for years.
Lancashire Police, Special Branch and MI5 all knew about the extensive allegations.
Child abuse is not just about old men in dirty old coats, you know what I mean? We're now talking with Jimmy Savile. We're talking about politicians coming into the affray. We're talking about Secret Service people coming into the affray. There were Secret Service people going to Haute de la Garenne and politicians from other countries, and they were abusing children. And some of them were paying to murder children, babies, whatever they could get.
Anyway, the man the NSPCC have called Britain's most dangerous and prolific child molester ever, Jimmy Savile, spent 11 successive New Year's Eves at Chequers, the most powerful residence in the land, as a guest of Conservative Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. And today's police report on the 450 abuse crimes Jimmy Savile committed and the 34 known rapes begs the question, why was none of this published or reported in Britain's so-called free press, nor noticed by the police and prosecuted by them until after he was dead? Then there is the Lord McAlpine case. Evidence of McAlpine's innocence from paedophile involvement has still not been tested in court. Chris Patton's BBC caved in and settled out of court. The BBC is, of course, heavily implicated in Savile's paedophilia, allowing sexual assaults to take place on BBC premises. And I suppose it ought also to point out that both Lord McAlpine and Chris Patton are both Tories. There is still our own Bristol case as well. BBC presenter and child molester Peter Rowell, who's now in jail. He was also one of the Prince Charles's ambassadors entrusted with assessing young people as part of the Prince's Trust scheme. So today, maybe some closure for victims and their families if they're still alive, but still no justice. Those that censored the transmission of Liz McKean's December 2011 Jimmy Savile Newsnight expose are still working at the BBC. Only the Director General George Entwistle was given a big payoff to walk. BBC under former Bath Tory MP and Cabinet Minister Chris Patton, of course they're both colleagues of each other. So I spoke to Michael Shrimpton about this very issue and first put to him questions about the Jimmy Savile and if he thought that the Tory party had really come clean about what Savile had been up to.
I'm Michael Shrimpton. My day job is barrister. I used to be an immigration judge many years ago. My other job is as an intelligence and national security consultant. I've just written my first major book, Spy Hunter. we weren't getting anywhere in the intelligence community. We were being blocked persistently and consistently in London and Washington, and it seemed to be that only by bringing public pressure to bear on politicians could you actually get anywhere. It's extraordinarily frustrating. Intelligence is about speaking truth to power, but if there's nobody in power able to act on the intelligence, then it's a little bit pointless gathering it in the first place. There are people still alive who are involved in the paedophile scandal, and obviously I'm not going to name them on a radio program, but the most prominent paedophile associated with the Savile ring was a man called Edward Heath, who you may recall was Prime Minister and took us into the EEC. And Heath was recruited as something that Christopher Story published in 2005, something which was confirmed to me by General Obus Marcus Wolf of the DVD and the Stasi. Heath was recruited by the Germans in 1937. I've said this in Spy Hunter. Heath was into little boys, and Savile was supplying them. A number of these boys were taken out of the Haute de Garenne home in Jersey. Savile was taking children from a children's home with the support of German assets in Jersey. Remember, the Germans used to run Jersey, and whenever the Germans overtake somewhere, there's always a stay-behind intelligence organization. German assets didn't pull out of Jersey in 1945. Only German troops marched out, they surrendered. The German intelligence operation in Jersey stayed on after 1945. Jersey was very important to the Germans because of offshore financing, because we do a lot of our offshore financing through Jersey. The banking in Jersey is quite interesting. And what was happening was that children's homes in the Channel Islands, particularly de Garenne in Jersey, children were being taken from these homes, boys in the case of Edward Heath, as he was gay, and a paedophile, were being taken onto his yacht, the Morning Cloud. There were in fact several Morning Clouds, but there was one in particular which won the Sydney Hobart Yacht Race, which was eventually sunk in the English Channel, from memory. But it was the boat that was sunk on which most of the abuse took place. Savile was actually going out he went down to Jersey, and he was actually taking boys. There was another man involved as well, but Savile himself took boys from the children's home, where he was a guest, or welcome, onto the boat. So he was taking boys out onto Morning Cloud. Now, since Heath was well known, and since the boys were talking young men, it depends how you define child, but as a lawyer, one would normally we define children as under the age of 14, which is the age of criminal responsibility. They were about that age, sadly, but they were old enough to know who was abusing them. It's quite clear that in most cases they weren't willing to be abused, and even if they were, at that age, we don't regard consent as informed consent. Defined in the United States of a phrase, statutory rape. The boys were murdered and thrown off the boat.
As
Barristers,
we carry on.
psychiatrists,
Yes.
police officers,
Yeah.
secret services.
Well, this man is now just appearing everywhere, but of course you have been saying for years that this man is not. This man has been an abuser.
Yeah, well, he has been an abuser, and I believe that Jimmy Savile has been complicit in the murder and the torture and the making of snuff movies of children. He's at Haute de la Garenne, for God's sake. Jimmy Savile was at Haute de la Garenne. He had associations with the Crays. Him and the Crays, this is Jimmy Savile as well, that was procuring children to then pass on to Ted Heath.
Yeah.
Edward Heath.
Well, some people are going to be utterly shocked that we've now got mention of a politician, but if you talk to people who know, like yourself and other people,
it's just common knowledge.
It's
to
common
me.
knowledge to many
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a change in legislation. I'll read it just for the people listening as opposed to viewing. But as of April 2009, because of a change in legislation being introduced by Jack Straw, the Justice Secretary, the media will no longer be able to identify those involved in cases such as the Websters. Now, the Webster case is a child court case, family court case. And then this absolutely blatant statement, so it continues, it will also be illegal for any children currently in care to speak out even if they feel they're being mistreated. If we have a look at another politician, and the lady concerned is Harriet Harman. Here she is. She's, of course, looking very clean and smart and upper middle class. Do you think? She's not quite upper class, I don't think.
Well, I don't know, Brian. I just think bitch.
Well, here is the woman. And if we dig back into her history, we find that when she was originally connected with the National Council for Civil Liberties, which is the forerunner of Liberty, the organisation, she was lobbying for the rules on pornographic photos of children to be relaxed. And if I show this in a bit more detail, here she is looking a little bit chubbier and younger, of course. And I'll just read what was going out. In NCCL's official response to the government's plans to reform sex laws, dubbed Lolita's Charter, it suggested reducing the age of consent and argued that childhood sexual experiences willingly engaged in with an adult result in no identifiable damage. It claimed that children can suffer more from having to retell their experiences in the court or the press. And then in an official NCCL response, which was signed by the then Miss Harman, that was a response to the Protection of Children Bill, it was claimed that the new law could lead to damaging and absurd prosecutions and increase censorship. She suggested that a pornographic photo or film of a child should not be considered indecent unless it could be shown that the subject had suffered, and that prosecutors would have to prove harm rather than defendants having to justify themselves. And at the time that this lady made this remarkable statement...
Evil statement, Brian, I think. I believe that is evil.
Absolutely. And we've got, well, okay, the images come off there, but at that time, the National Council for Civil Liberties was directly linked into an organisation called PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange, and it was also linked into PAL, Paedophile Action for Liberty. So we just ask a question here. We've got one, they happen to be Labour MPs, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We've got one Labour MP who's quietly bringing in a law so it's stopping children who are being abused speaking out. A classic example with that going on at the moment is Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, where none of the Oxfordshire Safeguarding Board have actually dealt with evidence of abuse within the college. So one man is denying children the opportunity of speaking out, and then here we've got a lady who is actually pushing to make it easier to take pornographic pictures of children.
Well, there you go. I mean, you know...
do they not think like ordinary people?
Downing Street is in hot water over allegations that it attempted to sweep under the rug the arrest of a close aide of the Prime Minister over a child pornography probe. The official, part of whose role was to advise online porn filters, was reportedly warned that police were investigating him hours before he was detained. RT's Laura Smith has the details.
His name is Patrick Rock, and he is in fact, though, a veteran Conservative Party advisor, David Cameron's Deputy Chief of Staff. He's been called Cameron's fixer, and he's had what one might call unparalleled access to power over a very long time, over the last 4 decades, right there in the heart of government. The irony lies in the fact that he's also been closely involved in drawing up government policy on internet pornography filters, and this is a man who was arrested recently on suspicion of what everybody's calling an offence related to child abuse images. So not just pornography, but what appears to be child pornography. Now, his arrest happened on February the 12th, and he then resigned, but this was all on the quiet. Downing Street appears to have covered it up until it was confronted with it now. So for the last 3 weeks, no one's known anything about this, but apart from the Prime Minister, who apparently has known for 3 weeks. He said he was very concerned that the matter should be handled correctly, that he didn't want to brief preemptively on a criminal investigation against a member of his staff. But his critics, who are mainly Labour members of Parliament, so opposition, say that this raises a number of questions. For example, what level of security did Patrick Rock have? Is there other stuff that we don't know about? It's also emerged, by the way, that Rock had previously been accused of sexual harassment, which was dealt with by his boss at Downing Street, so a political figure rather than a civil servant figure, not very usual. So again, some sort of oddity going on there. The Prime Minister's being accused of a cover-up, and his Labour critics say that this undermines the entire credibility and effectiveness of the government.
Are you aware of living paedophiles currently encircling Parliament?
Oh yes, there are several in Parliament at the moment.
Right.
And they're being blackmailed.
They are being blackmailed.
And it's a problem.
And by whom would they be blackmailed?
Well, it all goes back to Germany. The German intelligence are the classic users of paedophiles. The Germans understand paedophilia very well. Not saying all Germans are paedophiles, but
obviously.
The German intelligence have always understood paedophilia, and they've also had a good understanding of human nature and human weakness. It partly goes back to Freud, who was one of their intelligence advisors. He was one of their psychiatric advisors. The Germans have always had brothels, male brothels, in England. In the 1930s, they had 3. There was one in Oxford, one in Cambridge, and one in London.
Right.
And they also had female brothels as well. And
interesting dispersal there, really, isn't it?
Well, yes, and it's not. London is the centre of power. Oxford and Cambridge are the centres of education, or were then. And of course, what the Germans are doing is spotting future leaders.
Right.
Edward Heath was recruited at Oxford. He was recruited at Balliol in 1937.
Right.
Edward Heath first met Adolf Hitler in 1937 at the Nuremberg Party rally.
I encountered Kenneth Clarke MP, and when I did so, and I met him at Ian Greer's office, he molested me. He put his hand on my penis and kept it there. They haven't spoken to Kenneth Clarke MP, and they said they wouldn't be speaking to him because he was above the law. It was videotaped because it was the Cook report. We videotaped everything. So we had a jacket camera and we had a suitcase camera. And when I was in the room, the suitcase camera I think went on the sofa opposite, and I had the jacket camera on. Now you can't see anything with the jacket camera because obviously someone comes in and touches you that way, but on the suitcase camera you saw it. And when I got the tapes back to the, we were staying in the place called the Hyde Park Residence, they played the tapes, and the producers sat there and they watched it, and I watched it. So I know that they knew that I'd been molested by Kenneth Clarke MP. John Major knew what we were doing, found out about it, and got Carlton Television, Carlton Communications, to buy Central Television to get hold of the Cook report tapes, to get hold of the tape of Kenneth Clarke molesting me in Ian Greer's office as well. So these tapes were taken by Carlton Communications. John Major said, well, the scandal was so huge it was going to bring down the Conservative government, got Carlton Communications, who was a client of Ian Greer at the time, to do him a favour, which was to buy Central Television, which we were planning to do anyway, but much later. Because they were going to buy sort of all the little small independent television stations.
So you could get that film footage?
To get that film footage. Now, the man who did the actual getting of the tapes was Prime Minister David Cameron. He worked for Carlton Communications. He was Michael Green, the CEO's right-hand man, and he handled it. So when the police went to David Cameron to say about questioning Kenneth Clarke, guess what he said? No.
Well, first of all, this is from a very credible source. It's a member of Parliament. It's somebody who has been providing us some very important information over the last 4 years, about the work we're doing and the impact it's having. And he made it clear that his information was that they were considering it on the basis that the work we're doing is hitting very close to home, obviously. And it's no accident that it was announced that this sedition order was being considered the very week that we exposed, if you remember the announcement that came last Monday, when Joseph Ratzinger went to London, the first visit of a pope to England in history, on September 16th, 2010, he went to Holyrood Castle to meet with Queen Elizabeth, and they were closeted in there for, about a day or two. It turns out that from the same source, we discovered that Queen Elizabeth actually agreed to place all Anglican clergy under the Catholic policy known as Crimen Solicitanus. that basically orders Anglican priests now, along with Catholic priests, to cover up child abuse. What she just did by that was violated her coronation oath, where she swore to protect the citizens of England. She has agreed now to cover up child rape. This is like an official criminal conspiracy. And naturally, us exposing that puts them in a really dangerous position. She should, under British law now, be forced to abdicate, she and all her heirs, because she's, completely committed treason, in effect. Now, their backs are obviously to the wall on this, and they are now obviously getting some advice that I should be permanently silenced, because in order to stop this, which could lead to a whole chain of events which could topple the whole British monarchy. So, I'm not surprised in a way they're acting that way, but they've been striking at people around me as well. If you remember, 3 of our members over the last little while have been put in British or Canadian prisons on trumped-up charges. One man was put in a mental hospital for 3 days until we got him out, the fellow in London, David Compan. So, they've been hitting around us, but definitely this is aimed at trying to, stop this exposure of the direct link between the Vatican and the Crown in protecting child rapists around the world.
And we did ask the Liberal Democrat leader Nick Clegg and former leader Lord Steele for an interview, but they were not available to appear on this programme. We're joined now from Birmingham by the Liberal Democrat MP John Hemming. John Hemming, this is a sorry tale for humanity, let alone for the Liberal Democrat Party.
Or the Labour Party, which were involved in talking to the DPP and stopping him being prosecuted. Yes, we shouldn't really worry about the party.
That's an important point, isn't it? Because, of course, that happened because there was a very, very narrow majority at the time, and Cyril Smith was it.
Well, no, actually, remember, Cyril Smith wasn't always a member of the Liberals. He was actually a Labour councillor for part of the time as well. And I don't think... We need to look at this from the point of view of how we stop cover-ups, because you've got this situation, you've got what happens with Hillsborough, you've got current things like Michael Doherty's case, and it's far too easy for powerful people to get away with wrongdoing and nothing be done about it.
But are you sure? Because these days, like it or not, this would have found its way onto the internet. Somehow, in this much more liberated period, we would have found out about it.
Well, I am aware of things that are still kept secret by the use of court orders, for instance, criminal allegations which are being kept under wraps today, and obviously your editor doesn't want to go to jail, so I can't mention them.
Well, there are super injunctions, but they too had their day, sort of thing, didn't they? We can paint this into some kind of mass conspiracy. The real issue, surely, is the particular party which seems to have had an awful lot of problems in this direction, i.e. yours, really getting to grips properly with it.
Well, we need to make sure that when people commit criminal offences, that there is a mechanism, and I would argue through controls on judicial review. In fact, last year, one of my reasons why I'm not very happy at all with Nick Clegg is that he blocked my private members bill, which would have made it much easier for people to challenge a failure to prosecute. And so that the victims in these situations wouldn't have to wait 40, 50, 60 years for justice, but would be able to get it in the short term. And I think that's what we need to be doing. We need to look at society and see how often these cover-ups happen. We also need to look at what the involvement of the security services in this. Were they involved also in Kincora? I'm worried about what happened with Leah McGrath Goodman, who was banned from this country because she wanted to investigate Jimmy Savile. And that was before it became public, and I'm trying to investigate that at the moment.
Well, we'll keep in touch with you and see if you come up with anything. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, John Hemming. Thank you.
No problem.
I will try and talk to you about the story on 2 levels. There are two important levels in the story. One is the horror of the case itself that's been described by virtually every journalist as one of the most horrific of its kind ever in British history. And the other is the truly staggering lengths of the establishment in Scotland to cover this story up. It goes right to the top. It goes to Alex Salmond, the First Minister. I think one gentleman earlier on was saying how he saw the Question Time programme on Thursday night, in which Alex Salmond was speaking there. I can tell you that Alex Salmond is knowingly covering up for multiple child rape, rape of people with disabilities, and he's covering up for a murder as well. And he knows all about this, and he does not want his government to be embarrassed. That's the word, embarrassed.
Very fast-moving situation. This is the nub of it, is that Robert was arrested mid-morning on the 13th of February. That was by a combination of Cheshire police and police who travelled down from Aberdeen. And he was then taken north of the border. Now, initially, the reports, and we were getting reports from people very close to the case, including some family members. So the information they gave us appeared accurate. But it now has come to light that this is really what's going on, that Robert was taken north of the border, was subjected to a psychiatric examination. He was heavily questioned by the police about, amongst other things, Alex Salmon, and particularly the Violate S&M club, which I believe is based in Glasgow. But this questioning was not done as part of a formal police questioning session. And Robert has been visited now by somebody in prison, so we're pretty sure of the accuracy of the information we're getting now. And Robert still does not know the exact charge that has been used to arrest him in England and then imprison him in Perth. So he's on remand at the moment. We still believe that he'll be due back into court on Friday, but of course nobody has any idea of the charges. And at the moment, Robert still does not have access to his own legal representation, having a bad day today. But we know that steps are being taken to correct that as we speak. So if we just give a bit more detail to that, apparently he was arrested by 6 Scottish police, headed by a DI, Alex Drummond, plus 1 officer from Cheshire Police. Now, presumably the Cheshire Police were there to keep an eye on their Scottish brothers, who, of course, were operating in England. And we know he had his home searched. We know that computers and things were once again taken away. But we understand that this time the police were quite courteous with him, and we don't think he was even handcuffed, although obviously he was then bundled into a police car to be driven north. So he got to Queen Street, Aberdeen Police Station at about 7:30 p.m. that evening. He was checked in, and then a Dr. Weirden arrived, apparently to assess his mental state, followed by 2 lady psychiatrists. Dr. Weirden asked him if he wasn't rather overcommitted. So it appears to us, particularly with the experience of knowing how English social services will work to get mothers who fight for the safety of their children, to get those mothers sectioned, it seems to us that this was a pretty crude attempt of the Scottish establishment to have a go, certainly at intimidating Robert, and probably to see whether they could find anything in order to section him. But on this occasion, the 2 psychiatrists pronounced him fit. But around midnight, he was then driven to Cornhill Mental Hospital, where he was interrogated for an hour by a lady psychologist. But again, this time, nothing found. So he was then basically put through the courts, the sheriff court. And he's apparently, Robert has told his visitor that basically he had to hang about all day waiting for the case to come up, and it was only dealt with after everybody else seemed to have cleared those courts. So I think we get an impression as to what was going on, and we believe the sheriff who presided over his case is a Mrs. MacDonald, and it would appear that she was either drafted in from Dundee, which is what we originally heard, or possibly Perth. And we think that this special sheriff was because we understand that there's some consternation amongst the Aberdeen sheriffs who it would appear don't want to be involved with the case. So we'll leave that to your imagination. And I would just end on a good note, is that when Robert was taken into Perth prison, he said he was greeted in a very positive way by both inmates and prison officers, who were clearly aware that he was coming, and he's received huge support, I will just say, from members of the establishment, who absolutely know that basically Robert has been campaigning to take the lid off the paedophile networks operating through the establishment in Scotland.
So he hasn't been officially charged as of yet, and he hasn't been. He's not inside for, because there has been a blog go out today that he's in prison for a year.
No, that's not true. He's on remand. We understand the longest that he could be held for is 150 days, which is still a very long time. But basically he's on remand and he's due to be brought back into, we think, Aberdeen Sheriff Court on Friday, although, as we're saying at the moment, there's no information on the charge. And I would very much like to thank Belinda for that very comprehensive report. There is a new website that's gone live, which is free Robert Greene. I think that's .co.uk, but if you search for Free Robert Greene in Google, you will find it. So what's been going on here? What's this man been doing? What's his real crime? He's consistently campaigned for Scottish police to fully investigate those named as abusers by Holly Gregg, and indeed Holly was also able to name other children who had been abused. We simply ask, could the reluctance of the Scottish establishment to investigate be due to the fact that Holly named both members of the judiciary and establishment, and indeed the police? So, an unpleasant topic, and it really brings us on to this one.
This one, indeed, yes. It's come out that the Labour MPs have come out and apologised for being involved with PI, the paedophile information exchange, and Brian's been doing some work on this morning, putting some pieces together.
Well, we decided the easiest thing was to take out the key pieces of the information in the paper, and this is really what they're talking about. They're talking about Patricia Hewitt, ex-MP now. She was working with Harriet Harman, MP, and we've got Mr. Jack Dromey as well involved, and this is the key organisation that all three of these people were involved with, the National Council for Civil Liberties. We're going back into the late 70s at the moment. Mike?
Yeah, Jack Dromey is Harriet Harman's husband, isn't that correct?
Indeed he is, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that. So here's the roles that we're looking at within National Council for Civil Liberties. And this is where it starts to get very mucky, because NCCL was involved, as Louise just said, with PI, but also they were there with the left-wing magazine Rights. Now, this is information that's come out of the Daily Mail, very, very comprehensive article, so well done, the Daily Mail.
Well, you should be commending the column, because the column has been exposing this for a very long time.
Well, that's true, but I'm going to say praise where it's due, Lou. We know that we have got mainstream reporters who on this particular subject won't give up. But here's a quote from a gay paedophile involved with the Rights magazine, Mike Morton. Consensual sex between adults and children is simply people of different age groups being nice to each other. Oh. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So direct links between the National Council of Civil Liberty and the Paedophile Information Exchange. And what sort of thing was going on? Well, of course, legalisation of child sex, and they wanted the age of consent reduced to 4 years old. So this is a very, very interesting picture building up now. Police investigations going on, which we'll mention, around senior members, particularly of the Labour administration, but Harriet Harman, of course, deputy leader of the existing Labour Party. Exactly. So for viewers who are overseas, you're now starting to get a real snapshot into the quality of the people that we've got running Britain. And of course, we've seen over many recent months the establishment running scared of a full and proper police investigation into the high-level paedophile rings, particularly those around Elm House. So can you tell us about this man?
Yeah, I had a little look a while back now on who was behind PI, and here we have this gentleman here. His name is Peter Wrighton. He is dead now, and he was actually the founder of the PI. And he linked very closely. We've got some quotes actually come up here now with links to Cyril Smith.
Well, this is the main bit.
The main bit is the victim who had pointed out about Cyril Smith and Peter Wrighton being at various parties. The victim said Wrighton's evil network stretched to the top of the UK establishment and that he brought him into contact with fellow pervert MP Cyril Smith. So this then took me to another gentleman.
Can I just, sorry to interject, just mention here that, of course, it's top policeman Bernard Hogan Howe from the Met Police who said that he's not going to investigate the paedophile activity around Cyril Smith. That's an interesting question for a policeman to say he's not going to investigate when we've got activity around politicians, albeit dead.
So after looking at Peter Wrighton, I came across this chap. His name is Charles Napier. He was a former teacher. He was let off so many times, ended up in other countries, foreign countries, ended up getting sacked from a few schooling jobs, then finding ways to get round because through his connections back into schools. He was then eventually picked up, and this guy was the treasurer of PI, and I'm still doing a little bit more investigation on whether this guy is still inside or not, but there are links to, I believe, Sydney Cook as well. But I'm actually going to be speaking to Bill Maloney in person on Friday night, and that show's going to be aired live here at 5 o'clock. So we will find out a lot more about this chap and Peter Wrighton.
Okay, well, let's come back to the main bit of the story here. So these are some statements made by Harriet Harman and Patricia Hewitt on the subject of the paedophile information exchange. So this one's from Harman, an annual report dated 1976. She describes PI in glowing terms as a campaigning counselling group for adults sexually attracted to children. And I'm going to say this is all information out of the Daily Mail article. Hewitt complains that PI had recently been the subject of a hysterical and highly inaccurate article in the Sunday People newspaper, headlined "The Vilest Men in Britain," and that was designed to foster misunderstanding and hatred as to what these men were up to. So two highly protective statements of PI by these two women. In 1978, the National Council for Civil Liberties submitted a briefing paper to Parliament on the upcoming Protection of Children Bill, which sought, amongst other things, to outlaw child pornography. Written by Harriet Harman, the briefing advanced an extraordinary argument that images of naked children should only be considered pornographic if it could be proven that the subject had suffered. So the onus was on a tiny child, and presumably their parents, to prove that paedophile activity had taken place. In 1976, NCCL lobbied for the age of consent to be lowered to 10 years and for incest to be legalised.
Whoa.
And in 1978, NCCL lobbied for child pornography laws to be relaxed. So we're not talking about a little bit of nibbling around the edges here. We're not talking about the age of consent being reduced to 15. We are talking about children as young as 4 being in the target of these people. And people supporting this are now in positions of power within Westminster and particularly within the Labour Party. But there was a bit more to the story, and it was that there at the moment is supposedly a thorough high-level government investigation. I think that's a bit of an oxymoron because I don't think we've ever seen a thorough government investigation. But they're looking at basically connections between Prime Minister James Callaghan, this man Merrill Rees, former Home Secretary. I believe he was also Northern Ireland Secretary at one point. But in his reign, public funds were actually being pushed through to the paedophile information exchange. I'm going to use the word alleged. It was alleged that public money was being pushed through to the paedophile information exchange. And this is the key bit. Police are now investigating the organisation as part of Operation Fernbridge, launched in the wake of the Jimmy Savile affair. Remember, Jimmy Savile tightly linked to the royal family, and in particular Charles. A senior source on the investigation says there is evidence that members of PI were abusing children on an industrial scale. And that, of course, is exactly what campaigners have been saying for many years. Bill Maloney, Pie and Mash Films, of course, has been one of the lead campaigners, a victim himself, so he knows full well what goes on. Robert Green doing tremendous work to try and expose the abuse of Down syndrome girl Holly Gregg. And of course, I think we're also allowed to say UK Column and many other free media organisations taking the lid off what's really happening. So we'll just leave you with a picture of Harriet. We're going to ask what's going on in Westminster. Are our children safe? Is the nation safe in their hands? And we just remind you here that this is what this lady thought. So that if you're taking images of naked children, you've got to prove that they've actually suffered. And this woman, deputy leader in the future, possibly leader of the Labour Party, possibly, if the British public allows it, a future Prime Minister.
Her position's got to be untenable now, doesn't it?
I would have thought so, unless the country is happy to move into a new phase of change and big society where the age of consent is 4 years old. It's pretty obvious, isn't it, what's going on?
The man you mentioned is a High Court Justice in England. His name's Adrian Fulford. He's 61 years old. He's one of the top judges of the High Court in England. He's a direct advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He advises her on constitutional matters. He's also a notorious protector of child rapists. He is part of a group called PEI, Pedophile Information Exchange, which the police in England have named as one of the main agencies for linking child rapists. They say it's one of the Scotland Yard inspectors was quoted as saying it's an industrial level of child raping activity going on. In other words, it's a massive network. And this Judge Adrian Fulford, so-called Lord Adrian Fulford, is right in that very deeply. He's organized. He was one of the original organizers of this PEI group. He's held, when he was younger, he organized protests to defend the right of child rapists, and he's get this, he has publicly advocated that the age of consent be lowered to 4. In other words, it would be legal for children as young as 4 to have sex. I mean, this is mind-boggling. It's a crime, and clearly he, regardless of his position, he is guilty as a citizen for aiding and abetting child rape. And you know, the amazing thing about this man is Tony Blair attempted to have him knighted. He became a Queen's Counsel in 1994, and he's a serving judge in the International Criminal Court.
Prince Philip is not good. He's not a good character. He's virtually going to go down in history as the Black Prince. His family were kicked out of Greece, and he was brought out of Greece in an orange box when he was just a baby, just a few months old. And when he met Princess Elizabeth, she was 14 and he was 18, and it was as he had just joined the Navy. He had 2 suits and 20 quid in his pocket, but and the introduction was done by Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was then about 39, and Winston Churchill at the time was the father was about 64. Prince Philip got involved in heroin trafficking, and he got involved in pedophilia. Which first? Princess Elizabeth and Prince Philip were due to go on a world tour, and they're due to go to New Zealand in 1952. But King George VI died, so she got crowned and the world tour was delayed a year. They went to New Zealand, and they went to Lake Rotoiti and stayed in Moose Lodge from the 1st to the 4th of February 1954. Now the pedophilia and the heroin go hand in hand, and that those who supplied children to Prince Philip were then invited into the heroin trafficking ring. And the heroin trafficking was done through the Navy, and it was done
This is also unbelievably disgusting.
Well,
what was the location where the bodies of children and women have been found again?
Sandringham House, which is actually Sandringham Palace. And it's actually on the Dragon Line that runs from Transylvania, where Prince Charles has bought a lot of properties. It's where the Dracula castle is.
So are you implying then that the yard has been dug up, that these bodies have been unearthed, and if so, who was responsible for that?
Yeah, but the problem is that Queen Elizabeth owns the court buildings. So there's no hearings in court against the Queen.
Yeah, but have these bodies then been excavated, as you imply, and if so, by whom?
They have been exhumed, and they were buried randomly, not as graves, and they were buried to be hidden. And investigations are ongoing.
I mean, yes, if they're buried randomly, it'd be very difficult to locate them. I think it's remarkable they've discovered, you imply, quite a few.
There are quite a few bodies there.
A murder investigation is underway on an estate belonging to Britain's Queen Elizabeth. The body of a woman was found on New Year's Day on the Sandringham estate in eastern England. The estate is a sprawling 20,000 acres, with parts open to the public. One detective says the body had been there for some time, but he offered no specific details. Police haven't said how old the victim was or how she died.
There are forensic experts currently working in the scene, looking at anthropology, entomology, and they will be working in pathology. They'll be working here probably through till the afternoon. I expect the victim to be recovered and taken to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital for post-mortem, forensic post-mortem this afternoon.
Most of the senior royals were on the Sandringham estate over the holiday weekend. The Queen often celebrates Christmas there. Buckingham Palace officials are referring questions about the case to the police. Matt Small, The Associated Press.
A murder on the Queen's country estate in rural East England. The dead body of a young woman found in a field next to where Prince Philip regularly goes shooting. A mystery the police seem no closer to solving.
Behind me are the gates which lead to Sandringham House, one of the Queen's private residences. The Queen and her husband Prince Philip traditionally stay here over the Christmas period up until the end of January, and they were here when the body was discovered on New Year's Day.
David Blackmore, who works on the local newspaper, was the first reporter on the scene after news of the grisly discovery broke.
As you can see around us, there aren't many houses around here apart from sort of the people that work on the estate, but the reaction from West Norfolk in general has been one of shock, really. I mean, you don't get murders every day of the week, and I think the fact that the investigation seems to sort of be grinding to a halt because they can't find identification, it makes it even harder for people to really digest this information.
The fabulously wealthy British royals use Sandringham as one of their many country retreats. The house is set in 24 hectares of stunning gardens amid the sprawling Sandringham estate, which is comprised of woodland and heath. The Queen can regularly be seen in the local village, often when she goes to church, and Prince Philip has reportedly been seen next to the field where the body was found with a gun. But part of the estate is open to the public, and this is where the woman's body was found. That's why the royal family aren't suspects so far.
You often see the royal family, royal parties out, shooting on the estate. There was a shoot, I believe, at the end of December as well, not too far from this area, and that's what police have said today. So that is something a bit new and perhaps a bit of a new line, really.
Police say the body may have been lying on the estate for up to 4 months, and they're currently sifting through a list of missing persons to determine the woman's identity. The royal family have been briefed, but not questioned, about the investigation. Roshan Mohammed Salih, Press TV, Sandringham in East England.
And in Britain this morning, police are hoping to solve a murder mystery with a royal twist. A woman's body was found Sunday on the grounds of one of Queen Elizabeth's estates. The discovery turned the Sandringham estate northeast of London into a crime scene. The royal family spent holidays there, including a New Year's celebration. Police are trying to identify the murder victim.
Obviously, we will be continuing our inquiries over sort of the next days and weeks to establish A, who she is, and B, how she came to be here and who is responsible for her being here.
An autopsy was conducted yesterday, but the cause of death was not disclosed. No royals are involved in the investigation.
British authorities plan to conduct an autopsy later on Tuesday. Incredibly, a body found on the Queen's estate in Sandringham. The cause of death not yet known. Royal correspondent Max Foster joining me now from London with more on that. How bizarre, Max.
Absolutely, a real murder mystery, isn't it? Apparently, a dog walker discovered some human remains on the estate on New Year's Day, and that's where this investigation started. Just to give you a sense of this estate, it is the Queen's country estate where she stays at Christmas. She's staying there currently, but it's 20,000 acres. It's absolutely vast. There are villages within this estate, so it is open to the public in many places. Only around the house is it very private and secure, and this happened about a mile away from the main gates to the house, so it is in the Queen's backyard, you could say. This is what the police told us about it earlier this morning.
I think the circumstances indicate that she is probably the victim of murder. The body has been in situ for some time, but again, the experts are here to establish exactly what that time frame is.
So, as suggested there, Michael, a female body. We don't know much more. We will find out more this afternoon following the autopsy at the local hospital, named in fact after the Queen, Queen Elizabeth Hospital at King's Lynn.
And no suggestion of any link to the royal household. It just seems to be a coincidence at the moment, or they just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a vast area, and it is open to the public, so they are actually going through all the unsolved crimes, not just locally, but nationally, to try to find cases which may relate to this, but they need the results of the autopsy. No comment from Buckingham Palace. So far, Michael, they're saying it's a police case, although they do say that the Queen is there, and you'd assume that she would have at least been informed about this. You'd expect to be told if a body had been discovered in your garden.
We'll talk about that. But now to more on that murder mystery unfolding at a rapid pace right now. The royal estate, a crime scene at this hour after a body was found close to the Queen's quarters. ABC's Lama Hassan joins us with the latest right now. Good morning, Lama.
Absolutely, Robin. Good morning to you. Well, the police are now treating it as murder, examining cold cases nationwide for potential links. ABC News has learned those human remains found so close to the Queen's residence on her Sandringham estate were that of a woman's body.
Just hours after the Queen and Prince Philip went to church this Sunday, a dog walker discovered the grim human remains in a woodland area on the estate.
It's pretty bizarre. I mean, Sandringham is huge, it's sprawling. Most of it is open to the public. And what baffles me is that why was it only stumbled upon on New Year's Day?
Found here just a stone's throw from the royal stud where the Queen oversees the breeding and training of racehorses, and less than 2 miles from the Queen's main residence. So when the royal family were wowing the crowd and celebrating Christmas at Sandringham, having a traditional turkey dinner, what they didn't know was within days the grisly remains of a human would be discovered. Eerie. What do you see? It's a mystery even the one and only great detective Sherlock Holmes himself might struggle to solve. Who did it? What are the clues? And it's not the first time this has happened. In March last year, the body of American Robert James Moore, described as a loner and obsessed with the Queen, was found 100 yards from Buckingham Palace. So will members of the royal family be questioned in this case?
I doubt the royal family will be questioned. I doubt anybody will be questioned, really, except the person who found the remains.
More than 200 people also live here, including farmers, gamekeepers and gardeners, and it's a popular tourist attraction. Someone must have seen something.
Well, the area is now a crime scene, as you said, Robin. It's swarming with forensic experts searching for clues, and the police have just released a statement saying that they are in the early stages of this investigation, which could turn into a complex case. The woman's body has now been taken for a post-mortem.
All right, Lama, thank you very much. We're going to bring an ABC News contributor and the royal editor of The Sun, Duncan Larkham, a good friend of ours. And Duncan, I know this is just unraveling right now, but the police saying this is going to be a murder investigation. What more can you tell us?
Well, it's a bizarre start to the year for the Queen. This is happening very, very rapidly. We heard about it first last night. It's been shrouded in secrecy. The body was found on New Year's Day, which incidentally was the day that the Queen and Prince Philip went to church and were in front of the TV cameras. So we're only starting to find out the details now, but it appears that, as you say, there was a really rather a gruesome secret being hidden just there on the Queen's back garden when all the royals were there celebrating the festive season.
And as we talked about in Lama's piece, how do investigators go about? This happened on royal property, and we heard in Lama's piece that some people believe that the royals will not be questioned, but, you know, they were there. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, Norfolk police have really got to make up the rules as they go along now. I mean, I don't think there's been an example of a murder case coming right into the grounds of a royal palace. Sandringham is very close to the Queen's heart. It's where they always spend the new year. And it's possible that somebody involved with the Queen's staff may know something, may have seen something. Certainly at this time of year, with all those royals in residence, there are dozens and dozens of security guys, policemen, undercover officers swarming through the grounds. It seems quite extraordinary that it wasn't until a dog walker discovered this body that nothing was found.
Well, you hit upon something right there, Duncan. All the security around the Queen of England, and a body is found. That has to be unsettling to the royals.
Yes, I mean, my understanding is that the Queen is being kept informed of these developments as and when, you know, there's news to tell her. I think she will be naturally very concerned about, you know, it's a little bit close to home, let's face it, and the area where the body was found is next to a small village on the estate, which is one of Prince Philip's favourite hunting grounds, where he likes to go out at this time of year and indulge in his favourite pastime.
And we do need to point out that it is a sprawling large estate, and that there are tenant farmers, there is public access, and so all those things need to be kept in mind. It's not just the royals that are there, right?
No, that's right. The Sandringham estate's about 20,000 acres, and there are lots of sitting tenants, cottages, villages even, that are owned by the sort of royal estate. So there's a lot of public toing and froing, especially at this time of year when tourists come to try and catch a glimpse of the royal family.
So where do we go from here, Duncan? What do you think is going to happen next?
Well, as you said in your report, there will be a post-mortem later today. What we still don't yet know is how long the body has been there. I personally find it inconceivable that the body would have been dumped there whilst the royals were in residence, and it would be one of the most crazy places to hide a body if you murdered somebody. I think you'd try and take it somewhere slightly more discreet. So really, we're waiting to find out how long it's been there.
Excellent point there, Duncan. Thank you, as always, for your reporting for us. We really do appreciate it. You take care. It is now 7:36.
But credit should go to Exaro, because they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. And there's another story waiting to unfold here to do with a videotape of pedophiles that has come out of Amsterdam. And basically this tape is explosive because in it is a Tory cabinet minister. Many names at the moment are drifting around the internet, but of course we certainly can't repeat any of those. But it is known to us that this level of evidence is now available to police, Fernbridge and Yewtree, but we are still waiting for the police to take full and proper action on the known paedophiles within Westminster. So if you're an overseas viewer or listener, do not be under any illusion that we are now living in Britain 2014, one of the most corrupt countries in the world, with the added so-called advantage that, of course, we can tell other countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and now Russia, how to run their affairs.
I'm here, actually, for the lower classes, not for the working classes, because they're playing with that now, the working classes. Oh, we're middle class, but we go to work. I'm talking about the lower classes that have fought in 2 world wars for this country, rebuilt this country on 2 occasions, and are now being treated worse than animals. Worse than the animals are treated in the abattoirs. And there is a genocide going on, and you've all been aware of it. You must be able to see it with our National Health Service. You must be able to see it with our social housing. You must see all the cheap labour coming in. You must see... I should imagine that everyone... How are you, bruv? I should imagine that everyone here is aware that paedophiles in very predominant positions, such as senior members of Parliament, we're talking about Elm Guesthouse here, and I know that Leon Britton, no one's named him yet, but I know that Leon Britton was messing about with children at Elm Guesthouse the same time as Gary Walker, who's a senior member of Sinn Féin. And I still believe, I've been saying it for a long, long time, and I think this is your governor. You're the governor, aren't you? Well, I've been saying it for a long time that these paedophiles, very powerful paedophile rings, as the Member of Parliament Tom Watson stood up in the House of Commons and declared there was a paedophile ring, very powerful, working in Margaret Thatcher's time. Well, it is still working, and I'm here to say that Leon Britton is one. So time to nick me, I think, Leon, if you're about, if you can get out of that chair. So there's Leon Britton. What else do you want? I've got a list of names. I've been talking to the chief witness of Operation Fernbridge, and I've now got names of 70 powerful people in this country and worldwide. And that is not just the entertainment industry. It is the media, and it is also the alternative media. So we've got some shocks coming on that, I'm afraid, chaps. What else? Ask me some questions. Lou Collins. Come up here, Lou. This is Lou Collins.
Hello.
Good woman. What do you think, Lou, about the paedophile rings that are operating in this country? Can I just say, 4 years ago, I asked Nick Clegg, what are you going to do about institutional paedophile rings that are operating in this country now? Nick Clegg's reply to me was, I don't know what you mean by institutional paedophile rings. Do you know what I mean now, Nick? And don't forget, at 24, you was working in Leon Britton's private office, Nick. So you got a few stories. Oh my God, I've just put Nick Clegg on it as well. Now, right, so we've got Kenneth Clark as well. We've got many, many people. This is your media. This media does not speak for the people. The same as the people's voice did not speak for the people. But it will. It will, and in every interview I'm doing now, I implore all victims to come forward now as witnesses, and let's get them. Don't be frightened of them. They've got nothing to be frightened. You've got nothing to be frightened of. You are the heroes. Come forward.
George Herbert Walker Bush is known to be a pedophile. He likes black boys. George W. Bush was caught passionately kissing a 14-year-old son of a judge who was applying for the high bench in the White House, and that was reported. The Bush sexuality is very confused, and the Bushes also appear to be the Sharifs. They are not who they say they are.
At the Bohemian Grove, I was involved in a rather private ritual, Catholic, Nazi, satanic in nature, a service, a working, if you will, with 9 relative unknowns at the time, so to speak. A most unique killing ritual table with 9 retractable, long, thin, sharp knives. Blades.
This summer sets us free. You burned me once again.
Young Catholic Kevin Collins, snatched off the streets of San Francisco, was sacrificed. As he lay on the table, the knives were brought up through him. And after this, each participant, buoyed by the others, rose to prominence. Leaders of the minions, princes unto mammon. I called it 9 knights, 9 arms, 9 blades. The participants, except for 1 or 2 I didn't mention, are Willie Brown, Arlen Specter, Barney Frank, Roger Mahoney, the L.A. Cardinal, Ratzinger, who's now the Pope, Robert Byrd, George Bush Sr., otherwise known as George Scherff, S-C-H-E-R-F-F.
You mean Magog? That's what they call him, the man who wages war against God in the final days of earth.
Yes, and Warren Buffett, and the Master of Ceremonies was Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino.
George Bush, that Kelly, my daughter Kelly, was used as a presidential model sex slave for George Bush at the same time I was used when Reagan was president. And she was only like 2.5, 3 years old when that started with Bush, and that, you know, right now she's in a group home because she's so severely disturbed from all the programming. Kelly.
But did Vice President Bush hang around after the party was over, or what?
He was after the party a couple times, and we were hiding in the closet, but I didn't do nothing with him. He was with a black kid, and he was with a white kid.
What do you mean with a white kid and a black kid?
Well, there was one...
Tell me about the time when you were in the closet.
Well, me and this other kid, we were...
Who's the other kid?
I can't even remember right now. He was from the Washington, D.C. area. So he wasn't from around here, but we were just sitting in the closet talking, just kind of trying to mind our own business, because we were staying away from the rest of the party. We were in a back room in a bedroom.
Was this after the formal party was over?
Well, it was kind of during the formal party, but it was after a lot of people had already started leaving and stuff, and we remember that a couple of Secret Servicemen came in. One went to the window and looked around outside the window and stuff. The other one came in, looked in the closet, and we thought he'd seen us.
Was it dark?
He had a flashlight. The lights were off. He didn't even bother turning the lights. Come in with a flashlight. Looked in the closet. You know, I guess he didn't really look around it, because me and him were sitting on the floor right below him. It kind of looked like this. He didn't even look down. It kind of looked like that and stuff. turned around and walked out of the room and stuff, and then we seen this other guy come in and stuff, and I didn't recognize him at first.
Was the closet door open or closed?
It was partially open.
Okay.
So we could, we could see out there and stuff. And, it's like the two people I knew as Webb. There's two kids I knew as Webb and stuff. One of them was from Washington area. Here's a white kid, and the other one was a black kid. I seen it at 2 different times.
2 different Webbs. One is a white, one is a black kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
One was from Omaha or somewhere out there.
Was the white kid or the black kid from Omaha?
The black kid.
Okay.
He's one that's from this area. And I seen at the time Vice President Bush go in, and all he did was the kids performed oral sex on him. That was it.
Kids what?
Performed oral sex on him. Then
the kid performed oral. Which of the black kid or the white kid?
Both. Well, first I seen him at 2 different times. First with the white kid, then with
when
the
you were in the closet.
Yeah, we were in the closet both times.
Oh, were you?
That was our normal hideout. Me, him, and other kids and stuff. That's where we hid out at. We go in the closet and stuff when we want to get away from the party.
So you were in that closet twice when Vice President Bush came in?
I was in that closet more than twice, isn't it?
I mean, when Vice President Bush came in, 2 separate parties, once with a white kid, once with a black kid?
Yeah.
So you saw him twice?
Yeah.
And the kid had to perform oral sex on it? And what happened after they finished?
He just got up and kind of left. And
it leaves one thinking, how big is this? And the answers come back almost invariably, most likely about as big as it could get. We're talking all the way to the White House, the rumors of George W. Bush and Victor Ashe, the former mayor of Knoxville, who has quickly been broomed over to Poland as the ambassador, gotten out of the country, is supposedly on record, according to Tom's research, as having visited George Bush virtually on a monthly basis. This homosexual, pedophile milieu seems to encompass extraordinary depths and breadths of American government and probably world government.
Now, I have some sources, some confidential sources, who furnish me information from time to time. And there's code words for some of these various operations. The code word that I'm going to tell you about right now, and this is in my source's own handwriting. He doesn't write too well, so I may make some mistakes. The Black Rose is the code word for this. It's a clandestine group of U.S. government operatives, primarily the CIA, which has for many years run illegal drugs and arms operations in both Southeast Asia via the Golden Triangle and the Middle East via the Golden Crescent, funded by the British socialist-based Russell Trust drug cartel. The Black Rose's current chairman and co-founder is an individual known as the White Rose, or GHWB, a known bisexual pedophile and CFR, Council on Foreign Relations conspirator. This man, as a top member of the Skull and Bones Society, developed the heroin ring, which, while servicing as ambassador, along with his CIA activities. The Black Rose also runs cocaine through Panama from Colombia to the offshore oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico. That's directly from a government agent.
Personally, I strongly believe that the American government did 9/11. Mm-hmm. There's various facts in that are available now that show that this was directly linked to the Bushes. Mm-hmm. It was a way for them to get a building taken down. It was a way for him to create a war. Most people are spoon-fed by the media, so much so, and I'm sure you're well aware of this, that they have such a political slant on everything. You know, it's like these reporters that are embedded with the troops. Everything they do and say is censored before it is let out. Yeah. And if it doesn't swing the way that they want it to swing, it gets killed.
Did you know Troy Boner?
Yes, I did.
What happened to him? I understand he died.
He died.
You know why?
It was under very, very strange causes. He had went to a mental hospital saying that there was people after him, and he was discredited. He ended up dying shortly after that.
I heard it was a drug overdose at a rehab center.
Yeah.
Do you think he was murdered?
I very strongly believe so.
Because he seemed like, you know, that Conspiracy of Silence video kind of circulates around the internet, and I've seen that. And of course, he was one of the major contributors to information in that video, and he sounded to me like he was really plugged into what was going on.
Did you know that video was to have aired on Discovery Channel?
Right.
They had it in TV Guide and everything.
Right.
20 minutes before it was to air, the Bush family bought it off and killed it.
Really?
Yes. He would have one party that was the social gathering. You bring the wife, sometimes even the kids. Then after that, there would be a few people that would stick around or come back, and they would have a separate party. And that was these sex parties. Your wildest dreams and worst nightmares. Yes, that's what went on.
Wow.
They would get these kids from the street. He'd offer them a life, and they didn't realize that he was going to take the president.
Which president was it?
Reagan.
Reagan
Had been there.
Okay.
And I'd seen the Bushes. There were various people that I'd seen. The one that's sitting in the White House right now.
Okay.
I would not trust that man with anything. He's a snake in the grass.
Okay.
Lo and behold on that, sorry to inform you people that like him, but if you knew what I knew about him.
Yeah.
There was a lot of these things that went on, and it was really a shame because you couldn't get anything done about it. And that was the thing is, if you told somebody, you may be telling the wrong person.
Yeah.
It was 1978, and it was determined that I had endured sufficient trauma to carry out my first trial run operation. An enormous quantity of cocaine had been flown in on one of these operations, and I was to deliver it into the neighboring state of Arkansas. By that time, Bill Clinton's drug operation was in full swing. He was governor of Arkansas, and I delivered this cocaine to a remote airport in Ouachita Forest, which I've since identified as Mena Airport. I also delivered a little packet of information and a small quantity of cocaine, a personal stash from J. Bennett Johnston, to Bill Clinton. I delivered it to Bill Clinton, and he cut out 2 lines of the coke, and he did inhale. That certainly wasn't the only time I saw Bill Clinton using cocaine. My sexual experience with Bill Clinton was extremely limited, in spite of the fact that I was a sex slave. It was my experience that Bill Clinton is bisexual, leaning far more towards a homosexual end. All I've ever seen him involved in was a homosexual activity, with very limited experience with him myself. Whereas my experience was much more prevalent with Hillary Clinton, because Hillary is also bisexual, leaning more towards a homosexual end, and it was she who accessed my sex programming to fulfill her perversions.
Under the watch of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, diplomatic security agents in Lebanon sexually attacked guards, State Department contractors in Baghdad bought drugs from an underground drug ring, and Clinton's own security agents while abroad routinely solicited prostitutes, taking the call girls back to the same hotel their boss, Hillary Clinton, was staying in. One wonders whether Clinton and her so-called advisor, Huma Abedin, who never leaves her side, joined in the little parties. But this is only the beginning of the sexual escapades in Hillary Clinton's State Department. Ambassador to Belgium Howard Gutman routinely ditched his security detail in Brussels and solicited prostitutes, including minors. The initial suppressed Inspector General report charged Gutman with pedophilia, sex with children. When agents discovered that Howard Gutman was having sex with children, it was allowed to continue for months. Why? In a name, Barack Hussein Obama. Gutman was a high roller and contributed $500,000 to Barack Obama's re-election campaign. Was Gutman thrown in jail, ID'd as a sexual predator? Were criminal charges lodged against the State Department contractors in Iraq for drug use? Were any criminal charges brought against anyone? No. It was all swept under the rug. It proved to be too damaging to the State Department. It proved to be too damaging to Hillary Clinton, slated by the Democrat Party to run for president in 2016. Hillary Clinton is no stranger to covering up sexual escapades. Her husband's indiscretions in the Oval Office involving a blue dress and cigars with Monica Lewinsky were pushed down the rabbit hole by Hillary Clinton's damage control team, sidetracking the country into thinking a, quote, vast right-wing conspiracy, unquote, was to blame for the behavior of her psychopathic sexual predator husband, Bill Clinton.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
But for Hillary Clinton to cover up sexual attacks, prostitution, drugs, for her to cover up sex with children, she has sunk to a new low. But this is only the beginning. Aurelia Fedenissen, the former State Department Inspector General staffer turned whistleblower who brought Hillary Clinton's cover-up to the public's attention, was given the classic shakedown.
Aurelia Fedenissen is claiming that she is being harassed by her former employer, folks at State. She says federal law enforcement agents have come to her house, harassed her children, and are trying to bully her into silence.
But this story is only getting started. Remember Watergate? It all started when a group of Nixon's thugs broke into the Watergate office complex in order to bug the Democrat headquarters, in order to photograph confidential documents. Guess what happened to the law firm Schulman and Matthias, the attorneys representing Aurelia Fedenissen? Their office was broken into multiple times in a single day.
There was a computer here. The computer is gone. That's one of 3 computers that were taken from the premises.
The video shows the pair of prowlers calmly leaving the building, seemingly with no worries about being spotted.
Somebody jokingly said it's Schulman-Matthias gate because maybe the door was rigged to stay open so they can get in after hours.
Schulman represents 2 people who filed whistleblower complaints against the State Department, charging
higher level senior officials in the Department of State have interfered with criminal investigations at a lower level.
Welcome to the beginnings of a new Nixonian administration headed by Hillary Rodham Clinton, set to begin in January of 2017.
Keeping them honest tonight, potentially hundreds of military employees and contractors who may have bought child pornography online but haven't been prosecuted or even in some cases investigated. That's right, you heard me, child pornography. As many as 1,700 names, according to a U.S. Senator, on a list of 5,200 from an internet sting operation overlooked the first time around 4 years ago. Only now are they supposedly getting a second look, and only after pressure from investigative reporters and the U.S. Senator you're about to hear from, Republican Charles Grassley. The Pentagon porn story began in 2006. An Immigration and Customs Enforcement child pornography sting operation called Project Flicker produced payment records of about 5,200 people, many of whom provided Army or fleet zip codes or military email addresses. Subsequently, the Pentagon's investigative branch, DCIS, began going through the ICE list to identify who actually was a DoD employee or a contractor. The investigation, however, only ran for 8 months and only cross-checked some 3,500 names for Pentagon ties, according to a senator. According to DCIS documents revealed in a Freedom of Information Act request, out of that 3,500, investigators uncovered 264 employees or contractors, including staffers for the Secretary of Defense and contractors at the NSA. 9 people had top security clearances. But only about 20% of those 264 people were completely investigated. Fewer still were prosecuted, and after about 8 months, the entire probe was halted. It left about 1,700 names totally unchecked, 1,700 alleged kiddie porn customers, an unknown number of whom may still work in some capacity for the Defense Department. Late last summer, after investigations by the Boston Globe and Yahoo News revealed the figures, a Pentagon spokesman promised to reopen the investigation, conceding that DCIS had stopped due to lack of resources. DCIS says it is now revisiting all 5,200 names, telling Senator Grassley's staff they've now identified 302 employees or staffers. The Pentagon's IG telling us, and I quote, any suggestion that the DoD Office of Inspector General or its criminal investigative arm, the DCIS, is not taking Operation Flicker and the issue of child pornography seriously is in error. But Senator Grassley says he is still not getting the cooperation he needs from the Pentagon. I spoke to him earlier. Senator Grassley, you were told that 5,200 Defense Department employees had allegedly purchased child porn, and yet you're saying only 3,500 of those names were cross-checked by a defense investigator to see if they were really DoD personnel. That's mind-boggling. Why weren't all of them cross-checked?
Well, we don't have an answer to that question, but it's quite obvious that the other 1,700 should have been cross-checked, and that's one of the answers to my questions that I want answered, and the implication of our questions is they ought to be cross-checked. We ought to find out, because we're talking about not just general pornography here. We're talking about child pornography, and child pornography, taking that down, is a crime. And also, there's an added factor here, considering the fact that there's a lot of secured information, national security information, that the world shouldn't know, that a lot of times foreign operatives will use this sort of criminal activity to blackmail to get information. So there's a lot of things here that are involved because it's a Defense Department issue as opposed to any other department of government.
Right. I mean, sir, if your numbers are correct, 1,700 people out there who allegedly purchased child porn, we don't know if they were ever cross-checked or investigated, right?
That's true, and there's been some other names in the hundreds where there's the names have actually been given out that we don't know what's going to be done about them. Now, there's some reason to believe that it's a criminal act. It's been so far since it's happened that they could be stale. Maybe you can't have criminal prosecution, but we would be looking at administrative action to be taken against these people. And I want to know who they are and what administrative action's being taken.
Yeah, because what's even more startling is that of the 302 people confirmed as DoD personnel or contractors, only 70 of them were actually investigated. How is it possible that all of them weren't investigated?
Well, here's, I think, the thing that overrides everything you just asked, and that is we ask criminal investigators in the Division of Defense that does that, the extent to which supervisors of these people knew that this was going, and the criminal investigators couldn't even answer that question for us when we had a briefing from them.
So wait a minute, so you're saying we don't even know if the supervisors of these people were told that their employees may have downloaded child porn?
That's the question that my staff asked of the criminal investigators, and they could not answer the question whether or not supervisors had been informed of this. And if supervisors don't know about it, it's a bad environment that things like this can happen in the first place, and worse, that it's a criminal act when things are downloaded.
Until you started raising this issue, this investigation was closed by the Defense Department. They only investigated for about 8 months. Do you think the Pentagon just didn't take this seriously?
Well, it's quite obvious that they didn't take it seriously, because it wasn't only that I was asking the questions. It wasn't until it started getting questions from people like you who are journalists that this got their attention, and we got any consideration and reopening of this in the first place.
Well, one of your staffers told us that getting information from the Defense Department on this has been like pulling teeth. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. Oh, I've been involved in oversight of the Defense Department for almost all the years I've been in the United States Senate, and it's very difficult to get answers from a lot of bureaucracies, but it's quite more difficult in the Defense Department.
Senator Grassley, I appreciate your time. We'll continue to follow this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.